Chaos Legion is an interesting game, and another one that I was first introduced to when I was overseas serving with the military. More accurately, I played it on a demo disc first, and instantly thought it had a strange addictiveness to it. So I bought it and had it shipped to me, and I enjoyed it right from the beginning. That's not to say it doesn't have its flaws, but I'll get to that. The story's a bit late in the beginning, but details the story of a man named Sieg going after a supposedly evil magician named Victor Delacroix. Delacroix definitely plays the evil guy well, citing that Sieg had killed his girlfriend Sela. Because of this, he goes mad with rage and seeks vengeance by stealing a forbidden book that details how to essentially bring the demons of hell to the world to tear it apart. Sieg's higher-ups then order him to chase after Delacroix, just to stop him from bringing the archdemon to the world. Sieg isn't alone in his task though. He gets to command an ethereal force known as the Chaos Legion. Practically being demons themselves, they fight alongside Sieg and also enhance Sieg's stats and abilities. This is the prime selling point of Chaos Legion. We start off with Thanatos, the ultimate legion in charge, but after the first level, which is considered a prequel, Thanatos' sigil crest gets destroyed and split up into 9 different pieces. If you ever want to use Thanatos again, you'll need to seek out these 9 crests. This is completely optional, but recommended, if anything for the massive stat boost that Sieg gets when wielding Thanatos. Have I confused you yet? Let me try to break it down a bit. After the first few levels, you'll obtain a new Legion crest. These crests must be equipped by Sieg in order to call upon the powers of the Legion. Sieg can also only equip 2 crests at a time, so you need to figure out which combination of legions you want to use. Each crest also gives you a small stat boost, depending on the legion. For example, if you equip the Arrogance Legion, your defense increases slightly. If you equip the Blasphemy Legion, your soul capacity gets raised. It's essentially up to you to figure out where your weak points are and how to adjust to them. But that's not all. Different legions also give you new abilities. The Flawed Legion gives you a double jump ability, and also a backwards kicking attack that breaks you off from engaging an enemy, while at the same time dealing some electric damage. The Guilt Legion gives you an enhanced melee combo, along with dealing fire damage with the last strike in the combo. If you remove the crest with these abilities, you won't be able to use them. At least, not until later on in the game. I'm still not finished. In addition to summoning legions into battle, you can also press triangle to use what's called their assist skill. That's what the number next to the soul meter is for. It signifies how many of these assist abilities you have remaining. Every legion's assist skill takes up different amounts of soul. In order to get more soul, you simply attack your foes. These assist abilities range from a defensive counter ability to offensive mind-like traps. Some of these are much more useful than others. So I guess before I move on, I should elaborate on soul and what it's used for. I've already mentioned that it powers your legions and is regenerated by killing your enemies, but it's also the main driving force for your summoned legions. When you summon one, they'll appear suddenly and immediately begin attacking. Pressing triangle forces the legions to perform another wave of attack. Every time one of them is hit, they'll lose a bit of soul. If the soul meter empties before you can retract the legion, the crest temporarily breaks and you'll be forced to feed it more soul power before you can use it again. However, there's nothing stopping you from using the other legion that you have equipped until the other one is repaired. This may sound easy to do. You might think, alright, well, you see the entire meter when a legion is summoned, so I can easily make them go away before the crest breaks. Well, in the beginning it is that easy, but not so much later on. For one, Sieg has to be standing on the ground to call or retreat a legion. Some enemies cause explosions that can push Sieg to the ground, and by doing so you might not get the chance to retract the legion. Other times, the enemies may just do that much damage that will instantly destroy a legion's crest. There's very little that you can do to prevent this, because even if you enhance the legion's defensive stat, it may not be enough. I keep mentioning it, so I may as well talk about that too. As you fight, you obtain experience points. These points don't actually go to Sieg, but instead to the legions that were equipped that stage. You can use these points to upgrade your legion's skill, assist ability, offensive power, defensive power, and also how many the legion are summoned. If you fail a stage, you can retreat back to the menu screen, but you'll only take a certain amount of XP with you, depending on the difficulty. For example, on normal, you only keep 50% of the experience you've obtained. This makes the game a bit more challenging, because although there is a grind factor, it's not as prevalent in later difficulties since you need to finish the level in order to keep the experience. In addition, you can find special crests that allow you to further power up your legions. These crests add on another level of upgrades, and if you upgrade the enchant ability to max, you'll get the passive ability perks of the legion without needing to equip the crest. This is especially good so that if you like an attack a legion gives you but don't enjoy using the actual legion, you can just get the necessary experience points, level it up, and never use it again. Finally, let's talk about the Thanatos Legion. It's leveled up a bit differently than the other legions. Instead of getting more copies of itself like every other one, instead leveling up the force category evolves the legion, making it larger and stronger. However, Thanatos is very expensive to maintain. and so it's recommended that you save all of your found experience gems for Thanatos. Okay, let's finally move on to the combat and gameplay. It's a pretty standard action game. You go from the beginning point of the level to the end, pretty much defeating anything that's thrown your way. At points you'll hit a closed gate which will force you to either eliminate all opposing enemies, or destroy the target enemy. Targeted enemies are usually either a powerful creature or a strange tower-like enemy that is responsible for respawning enemy monsters. In addition, every enemy belongs to one of two types, organic or mechanical. Each legion has an affinity to whether they'll do more damage to one of them. If you equip two legions that are strong against organic enemies and meet up with a lot of mechanical ones, it's going to be a long stage. Sake himself can attack organic enemies easily, so it's usually recommended that you bring along something that can dispose of the harder ones. Preferably either the arrow-based malice or the super powerful blasphemy's bombs. As you're destroying enemies, items may drop. Most of the time they're experience gems that allow you to allocate bonus XP to a legion of your choice. You may encounter restorative items, or you may find items that increase Siege stats. These range from attack, defense, max HP, or max soul. There is a maximum to Siege stats, but there's a very lengthy process to get them to that maximum limit. Because of the way your stats are kept, there's no actual RPG-style level showing the overall power of Siege. Finally, once you hit the end of the stage, you'll have to fight a boss. They typically have a bit of a weak point, but it's up to you to find them. The bosses also typically have a huge life meter. They, like many other action games, are gigantic in stature and don't hesitate to attack you. You don't need to get from the start of the stage to the end in one try. There are sparse checkpoints throughout most stages. When a screen transitions to a new area, it's considered passing a checkpoint. The best practice is that if you fail the stage and haven't hit a checkpoint yet, back out to the menu and bank the experience points that you can, instead of wasting them. You might be doing this frequently, because Chaos Legion is a difficult game. Enemies do massive damage, so using legions is almost a necessity, if even to give you a small breather and figure out your situation. If a crest breaks, you might feel a little handicapped until it's repaired, but in order to do that, you still need to fight. Thankfully, it doesn't take too long to repair a crest, but it still forces you to do it either without a legion or with the other equipped one. In addition to the damage enemies do to you, they can also create their own sort of combo attack. Most commonly, they'll pop you in the air and keep striking until you smack the ground. This can be very dangerous if you have low health, because you might not get the chance to recover. Even if you think the game starts easy, after fighting in stage 12 the world changes a bit, since it's considered that the demon world has been released. You can then re-access any prior stage, which is necessary to get the remaining Thanatos crests. However, these stages are now populated by more difficult enemies. The bosses remain the same, but battling to get there can be a true test of skill. What may have been an easy beginner-style enemy at the beginning can turn into the large hulking armored creatures. As difficult as it may be now, its biggest advantage is that you can replay these stages to amass experience points for your legions. There is a slight problem with the enemies you deal with though. Many of them are repeated. There's usually 2 different reskins of each enemy, including the boss characters. There really isn't much variety to begin with, so this is just a bit disappointing. To make up for this though, there are times when there are close to 20 or 30 different enemies on the screen. It's not quite the scale of, say, Dynasty Warriors, but it's pretty damn close. Siege has an arcing swing, so he's able to hit multiple enemies at any one time. However, because there are that many creatures attacking at once, it is much easier to get hit. That's why the legions are so important. It tilts the battlefield a little bit more in your favor. In fact, I've read that the game was originally intended to be a test of the PS2's capabilities. You may have noticed by now that the graphics are a bit on the basic side. Other than the Gothic style building structure and the very simplistic textures, there's no real environment. This is because, according to what I've read, Capcom created this game to test exactly how much action could be on the screen at any one time. Because of this, they have the expanse of nothingness that lays beyond the fighting area. That isn't to say that the game looks bad though. In fact, for what it is, it's actually pretty good. In addition to the cities, you do find a cave, a cathedral, and a forest. In fact, this forest stage is where you get to play as a woman named Arcia, who doesn't have access to legions but instead of a gun. She collects special bullets that do a very large blast of damage but are limited in number. She's only actually playable in one stage, but if you complete the game on normal, you'll be able to play as her throughout the entire game. I can't see why I would want to do that though. It's fun for one stage, but her attack is just as repetitive as Siege's, and since she doesn't get to use legions, there's really no point in playing as her, since those are really fun to use. In fact, the game itself can be considered repetitive near the end. Siege only gets one attack combination, so pressing square is all you're going to be able to do, other than the special attacks that the legions give him. Once you start getting all the spiritual gems, which are the ones that allow you to use the legion's power without equipping the crests, you aren't going to need many of the legions. In fact, if you manage to get all of Thanatos' chips, you'll probably end the game with Thanatos and Blasphemy. Although Thanatos is considered the ultimate legion, I found him only to be truly useful for his intense assist skill, where he slows down time and fires out a ton of homing projectiles to attack anything in sight. Sure, he hits hard when summoned, but at the same time, no matter how high I got his defense, he always seemed to fall in 2 or 3 hits. Blasphemy, on the other hand, is great all around. Its assist ability is to have Sieg kick it around like a soccer ball that explodes in contact. When bringing the Legion on the battlefield, the group will find an enemy, plant themselves, and explode. I'm not saying Thanatos sucks, but I don't think it's as good as it should be, especially since the method to obtain and level him up is very lengthy. Let's talk about the final boss. Don't worry, I won't spoil the actual story since it's essentially figured out right from the beginning what's happening, but instead I'll just talk about the bosses. Of course you have to fight Delcroft for the umpteenth time. He managed of course to summon the forbidden spirit Azrael, so you have to fight that too, which is a brutal battle. If you're not careful, it'll destroy your Legion crest in 1 hit. Thanatos is helpful since he can lock onto the demon and attack only him, but it's still risky due to the 1-hit knockout. Azrael can only be damaged when his head is in the right position, but it's hard to judge exactly where it's at. It's better to focus on evading Azrael's attack and attack only the smaller minions and let your legions do the harder work. When Azrael fails, you're not done yet. You have one final task, the final boss. I'm not going to say or show you anything from this part because you probably won't see this one coming, but instead just say that it's not as hard as Azrael, but it's still frustrating until you figure out the attack patterns. Once that's done, you're given the final cutscene and you're free to try it on hard difficulty or play as Arcia. Me? I stopped playing and started writing this, because that's what I do. Even though Chaos Legion does get a bit stale near the end, it's still a blast to play. Leveling up and using the legions is fun, but it's really cool to see just how many enemies are crammed in one room. I would love to see a sequel, but unfortunately, I don't know if that will ever happen. Either way, I'd say give this one a shot. I think I bought it cheap on Amazon for like $10, and that was years ago. Final score? 8 out of 10. This is Reaper. And just like before, find me on Facebook, facebook.com/ReapersReviews. Happy fragging.